is no plot. It was a little bit pretentious at times. Honestly, the first part was kind of boring, I'm not gonna lie. I do think it's a little unfair that this has such a low average rating. So in this reading vlog, I am gonna be reading the Atlas trilogy by Olivie Blake, which is made up of the Atlas 6, the Atlas Paradox, and the Atlas Complex. So this is a very popular dark academia fantasy series that first blew up thanks to TikTok, and then the third and final book came out in, I want to say it was January. This reading vlog is going to be spoiler free, so if you haven't read this series, then I'm not going to be going into any spoilers. I wanted to be able to answer the question, should you read the series? Because the first book was quite popular when it came out, but then the ratings for the second two books, books 2 and book 3 I should say, they weren't as high as the first book. So yeah, thank you for watching and I hope you enjoy this vlog. So this is my third attempt at trying to film this vlog update. I'm really struggling to get my words out today. I think I'm just tired because I've had a really busy weekend, but I wanted to let you know that I have now started the Atlas 6 by Olivie Blake. I am 150 pages into this and so far I'm enjoying it, but I can't really tell you why. Nothing much has really happened. It's very character driven and the focus is very much on exploring these characters and seeing their relationships develop, and it's all very interesting, but I feel like I don't really have much to talk about it. So I wanted to let you know that I have started this book and I wanted to explain a little bit about what it's about. So this is set in our world, except magicians have now been integrated into society. So alongside regular human universities, there are also magical universities, and at the start of the book we're introduced to these 6 individuals who are extremely talented, and because of that they're offered this opportunity to join the Alexandrian Society. We're following through their first year where only 5 of them are gonna continue on to the second year, and then I think once they complete their second year, that's when they actually get to join this society. So it's interesting. I'm enjoying it so far. I like the atmosphere. Stuff has been happening, but it's mostly been in the background. So they are studying different topics, but that's not the focus. The focus is on this group dynamic and how they're trying to build alliances. And there's some people that are just not interested in developing any kind of relationship with the other members of this group. Some of them seem to be quite grumpy. Some of them are just very reluctant to engage with any of the other characters, whereas others are much more enthusiastic. And it's very interesting because it's a little bit like if you've ever taken part in a group project, like in college or at school, you always get certain types of people. You get people who don't want to contribute anything and who don't ever show up for meetings, and then you get people who don't want to work in a group, they just want to do everything themselves, and this has that sort of dynamic. Obviously not exactly like what I've just said. What I'm trying to say is I really enjoy seeing this exploration of a group dynamic, and the characters are quite interesting, so very glad that I finally picked this up because I am enjoying it so far. Wondering if we are going to get much more plot in this book or whether this is mostly going to be set up and build up, but I am, yeah, liking this. Don't feel like I have much else to say. I think I forgot to mention I am currently reading this on my Kindle because the first book is available on Kindle Unlimited in the UK. The second book and the third book aren't, just for anyone who's interested, but I am now around 60% of the way through this and I wanted to share some more thoughts because I am really enjoying this, but I don't know why. I feel like if I was to describe my taste in fantasy, this would not fit it. The world building is really frustrating. I want more knowledge about this world. That's just the kind of person that I am. Even though it's set in our world, most of this book is taking place inside this grand English manor house where these magicians are currently living and learning together. And you do occasionally see see glimpses of the outside world, but you're not really learning much, and I want to learn more. The characters themselves are also very frustrating. Some of them are really stubborn, and it is frustrating because this is multi-POV. Sometimes a character will learn something and you'll see them trying to process that in their perspective, but then you'll jump to another perspective and they won't have a clue what's going on. They're working on something completely different. I think maybe that's why I'm liking it, because the intrigue is high. There's so much going on. It's almost like a puzzle that I'm trying to fit together. I have my suspicions based on what they're currently studying, but I don't know what's going on in this book, and I think that's why it's gripping me. I feel like I'm reading because I want to learn more, and obviously you're learning as the characters are learning, but because there's like 6 perspectives, it's just taking its time to build this picture. But yeah, it is good. I am liking it. I can understand why it's got so much hype, but I can also see some people picking this up and thinking, yeah, don't like this. It reminds me a little bit of Six of Crows by Leigh Bardugo, not because the characters are similar. Six of Crows is a lot more plot driven, whereas this is very much about the characters. But I think with Six of Crows, it's the kind of book that you love because of the characters, and the Atlas 6 is similar. I think if you pick this up and within the first few chapters you're not really vibing with the characters, then you're probably not going to enjoy the book. I wouldn't say that I love any of the characters, but I'm finding each of them interesting in their own way. I think my favourite character is Parissa. I'm going to read some more this evening and I will update you again tomorrow with my progress. I might actually finish this tonight, but I've also reignited my obsession with Below Deck, so I don't know what I feel more in the mood for this evening. I might read some more of this, or I might just spend the night watching the rest of season 3 of Below Deck Sailing Yacht. So whatever I decide, I will let you know tomorrow. But so far, I'm really glad that I decided to pick this up because it is really working for me, even though I feel like it shouldn't be. I am so glad that I decided to vlog my experience of reading this book, because I think I want to give it 5 stars. I think I'm going to give it 4.5 stars for now and then see how I feel in a few days. But I loved the ending to this. I feel like I can't even explain why, because anything I say could be considered a spoiler, but the direction that this went in is something that I do tend to enjoy. It was a little bit pretentious at times. I had been warned about that before picking it up. I mostly noticed it when the characters were talking to each other. Sometimes they would say something and I would think, no one talks like this in real life. But because it's a dark academia story and that's the general vibe that I think the author was going for, I can be okay with it. There's also some romantic relationships that develop, and I never really felt that invested in the relationships that were developing. The pairings that happened in this book, I wanted to see different pairings, which could happen in the later books. Although what I will say is I'm really hoping that this doesn't focus too much on the romantic relationships, and I say romantic very loosely because the relationships in this that were meant to be romantic felt more transactional. I don't think that writing romance is Olivie Blake's strength, so I'm okay with the relationships developing further, but they felt quite surface level in this. It felt like there was a lot of telling and not really much showing. I am also hoping that the next book has a little more world building, because this did feel like the tip of the iceberg. It felt like the purpose of this book was to introduce us to these characters and establish this group dynamic. Then the rest of the series might be where the plot actually happens. I think if you're a plot-driven reader, then this book is not going to work for you, because there wasn't really any plot until maybe the last 100 pages. But I read the last 40% of this in one sitting because I couldn't put it down down. Very happy that I enjoyed this, and I am excited to pick up the Atlas Paradox, which I think I'm going to read quite soon. I'm going to try and stick it on my May TBR. It seems like this is going to continue straight off the back of the end of the first book. I actually don't think it's going to be that difficult to keep this vlog spoiler free because this is so character driven and there isn't really much plot. I feel like it's much easier to talk about themes and character development rather than specific plot details. But yeah, I'm going to stop rambling. All you really needed to know is that I loved this and I'm very excited to pick this up. These books don't have the highest average rating on Goodreads, but I think this just goes to show that sometimes Goodreads doesn't know what it's talking about. Hello everyone, it has been a few weeks since I finished the Atlas 6, but I have now started the Atlas Paradox by Olivie Blake, and I thought I should share some initial thoughts and feelings even though I'm only around 60 pages in. I've read the first part, so I think there's 8 parts in total. I might have just made that up. No, there's 9 or 10 if you include the interlude. So I am, yeah, 60 pages into this, and so far it's back to being very, very slow. We've been reintroduced to these characters and we're seeing how this group dynamic has changed following the events of the first book. Honestly, the first part was kind of boring, I'm not gonna lie, but I am interested to see if we're gonna get any new perspectives in this or whether it's gonna focus on the core characters that we were following in book 1. This didn't open how I was expecting it to open. What was a little bit frustrating about the first book, and I don't know whether frustrating is the right word, but in the first book we were following this group of people knowing that other stuff was going on outside of this group and outside of this mansion. It was almost like the author was distracting you by saying, look at these characters, look what they're doing, but you know that stuff is going on outside of this group, you're just not seeing it. Don't have many thoughts, like I said, because I'm really not that far in, but I am going to continue reading this week. I don't know how many updates I'm going to do because I don't want to do an update at the end of every part, that feels like way too much, but because this is a sequel and I am going to keep this vlog spoiler free for now. If it stays very character focused, then I don't want to mention specific characters because then you're going to know that they make it through the first book. So yeah, I didn't really think this through, but I'll check in with you maybe once I'm halfway through. If I look a little bit tired in this update, it's because I am not wearing makeup at the moment. I've got something going on with my eye, so I don't want to put makeup on and risk making it worse. But yeah, I didn't want to leave it any longer before updating you with some thoughts on the Atlas Paradox because I'm now around halfway through. I'm at the end of the first interlude, which is page, there is no page number, page 219. So yeah, just under halfway through. And this had quite a slow start, but now that I'm into it, I'm really enjoying it. Took me a little while to get used to the writing style again because it is so pretentious and wordy. There's some words that are used that I don't even know what they mean. So I keep having to reread passages to make sure I have understood what the characters are talking about. But yeah, I think if you go into this hoping that it's going to have more plot than the first book, then you're going to be disappointed because there is no plot. But if you enjoyed the atmosphere and the philosophical discussions in book 1, then I think you're going to enjoy this just as much. As in the first book, there's a strong focus on academia and the pursuit of knowledge. So once you're initiated into the Alexandrian Society, you're meant to spend your second year working on a project, an individual project to contribute knowledge to the archives. It feels kind of fragmented because characters are working on stuff individually, but there are occasional crossovers. It's quite interesting actually because sometimes a character will come across another character and they'll say something like, or they'll think something like, wow, so-and-so seems tired right now. I wonder what they're doing. What's going on with them? And as the reader, sometimes we know what's going on with them, but sometimes we'll get back around to their perspective and find that something else has happened in the few days since we last caught up with them. So yeah, I can see some people hating that, but I am really liking that. For some reason, it's just really working for me. We're also seeing how the magician's powers are developing and growing and the implications that that could have. There's so much going on and I love it. So I think I'm going to marathon the second half and then give you a final update once I get to the end. So I have finished reading The Atlas Paradox. Here it is. And I'm happy to say that I'm giving this 5 stars. Objectively, do I think it deserves 5 stars? Probably not. I think this does suffer from middle book syndrome in a way because nothing happens for 80% of the book, and it's quite clear that this is mostly setting things up for the final book, but there was this intensity that I found really compelling and I struggled to put this down in the second half. I'm a little bit nervous to go into the third book because this has a lower average rating on Goodreads than the first book. And then the third book, which is called The Atlas Complex, that currently has a 2.9 average rating on Goodreads. And I don't understand, like usually with a series, the average rating gets higher and higher because the only people that are continuing into the sequels are people that enjoyed the first book. I don't know, obviously, yet why it was so badly received. I'm hoping that it's just a case of it not being what people were expecting. I'm just here for the vibes right now. I'm not even that fussed about the characters really. Yeah, there's a lot of grey morality going on, which I do appreciate. I'm actually quite glad that this wasn't heavily focused on the romantic elements. I think that a lot of people feel very invested in certain relationships because that was one of the main focuses of the first book. Like Olivie Blake sets up these romantic relationships and she hints at stuff that could potentially happen, and then this doesn't really focus on that. So I can understand some people finding that frustrating, but right now I am just happy to watch the events unfold and I'm happy to be along for the journey and just follow these characters and whatever they do next. Am I gonna like what they do next? Possibly not. I did enjoy this. I'm gonna give it 5 stars. Did I give the first book 5 stars? I feel like I might have done. Hopefully I do enjoy book 3, but like I said, I'm really nervous. I'm gonna take a little bit of a break before I pick it up and read some of the books. I've actually already started one, and then finish book 3, and this vlog can finally go live. So I made a start on The Atlas Complex, which also matches my outfit today, which is kind of cool. I am only about 80-something pages into this, but I wanted to let you know I have started this, and I think the plot for this is going to be to do with power and seeing characters disagree on how they should use that power. There are characters who are wanting to do something and other characters who think it's a terrible idea and that just because you can do something, it doesn't mean that you should. Very vague synopsis, but yeah, so far I've enjoyed the first 80-something pages. It's still a similar pace to the other books. I'm worried that I'm going to start to find this a bit tedious because of the way that this series is written. You're following all of these different perspectives and these different characters and nothing is really progressing. That's been the case with the last 2 books, but I'm hoping with this, I'm not fussed if we don't get a plot because I feel like I know what the plot is now. I know what the end game is and what we've been building up to. I'm just hoping we get some more satisfying moments because the first 2 books have been a little bit frustrating. This is going to be a really quick update because I currently have cold, but I wanted to let you know I am halfway through The Atlas Complex by Olivie Blake. I am on page 250 something, so around about there. And I literally have nothing to say about this book, and not just because it's the 3rd book in a series and I can't go into spoilers, but because literally nothing is happening and it's a really weird feeling to be enjoying a book even though you can't really explain why. Maybe I've already said that about other books in the series, but I think with the first two books, I knew that we were building up to something, so I was compelled to keep on reading because I wanted to find out what direction we were going in and what we were building up to. Whereas in this book, I know what we're building up to. It's been mentioned over and over again, and it feels like it's taken forever to get to the point. So I don't know why this is so long. I feel like I should be further along than halfway through. What I am liking about this one actually is how, I can't show you actually in case it's anything spoilery, but there's multimedia elements, which I'm liking. We're seeing characters interact over text message. There are parts that feel like they're written in a very deliberate way, and I'm still loving the atmosphere. I'm still liking this. I feel like that's not really coming across in this update. I'm enjoying this. It feels like it's going to be maybe a 4 stars, but I'm pretty sure when I read the first two books, they felt like 4 stars until the very end. So if this ends strongly, then it might be a 5 stars. I don't know. I'm glad that I've read the books in this series quite close together because there's been details mentioned in this from the first book that I had almost forgotten about. It's really interesting actually because the characters in this, some of them will fixate on something that should be quite a small thing, but then it'll grow and it'll grow until it becomes much bigger than it actually is. And it is interesting seeing how things from the first two books have now built up to this, the state that they're in this book. I hope that makes sense. But yeah, I am gonna try and finish this before the weekend. I've made myself a schedule, so if I read around, I think it's 70 pages per day, then I should finish this by Saturday. Overall, I don't really have many thoughts. It's just more of the same, but I'm wanting it to get to the point quicker. So I have now finished The Atlas Complex by Olivie Blake, which means I have now finally finished this series, and I'm gonna give this a very generous 4 stars. I should also mention actually, I picked up a copy of the Waterstones exclusive edition yesterday. I spotted this in Waterstones yesterday and I was so happy because this is the edition that has the stenciled edges. When it first came out, it sold out so quickly, so I didn't have time to pick up a copy. I think this came out before I'd even started the first book, so I didn't want to buy a copy until I knew whether I actually liked this series, and I can confirm I did like this series. I don't think it's a new favourite or anything. Also, I've just noticed I've scuffed the dust jacket, which is really annoying. But yeah, I'm gonna give this 4 stars, like I said. I don't think this needed to be nearly 500 pages. I thought that it was a little bit tedious at times, but in terms of how things wrapped up, I thought it was a fine conclusion. The thing is with this series is that it's not really plot driven, so I felt like the conclusion of the plot was a little bit anticlimactic, but in terms of how things resolved with the characters, I was okay with that. I felt like with this entire series, I was an outside observer watching these characters and whatever they decided to do. Each character had a certain personality trait. For example, we had someone who was golden retriever energy. We had someone who was like, what's the word I'm looking for? We had some people who were more morally grey than others. We had someone who was a bit more of a loner. There was someone who was a bit more extroverted. So each character had something to distinguish them from the others, but all of them felt like they had more fluid personalities. So there was never a point where a character did something that I felt was out of character, because I didn't feel like their personalities were fully cemented anyway. I never really felt like 100% invested in the characters, but because this world was quite cool and I enjoyed learning about all of the different types of magic that you can have, I was quite happy just hanging out in this world and just being an outside observer. But I think the main reason why this hasn't had some great reviews is because Olivie Blake does not care about fan service, which I actually really respect. I think some people were disappointed with certain things that happened in this book, but to me, I just didn't really care that much because I wasn't that emotionally invested anyway. I have seen some criticisms that this series lacked direction, which I do agree with. Sometimes it felt like it was trying to spread itself too thinly and it was trying to focus on too many things. See, I do agree with that. I think if you are a plot-driven reader, then this series is your worst nightmare because there is no plot, and what little plot there is, it's not really the point of the series. Like, the point of the series is the characters and the world and the atmosphere and the vibes, and I liked the atmosphere and the vibes, and I thought the characters were interesting, even though I didn't feel fully invested in them, as I've said many times. I do think it's a little unfair that this has such a low average rating, but I do understand that if you've become attached to certain characters and they don't get the resolution that you personally want, I can understand why that's a little disappointing. So yeah, this is 4 stars, but probably more like a 3.5. Not my favourite series that I've ever read, but I'm glad that I read it. I really enjoyed, like I said, exploring this world, and I would read other books that set within this world. I think it's a shame that this is a trilogy because I think there's more potential to see more of this world. It was really, really interesting, even though it's basically our world, but with magicians. If Olivie Blake ever publishes a spin-off series, then I will happily read it. If the camera angle has changed, it's because my battery just ran out when I literally only had like 20 seconds left to film, because that does bring us to the end of this reading vlog. Thank you for watching. If you made it this far, let me know in the comments if you've read this series and what you thought of it. Let me know if it's a series that you've been interested in and whether you are planning on picking it up soon. Don't forget to give this video a thumbs up if you liked it, and click subscribe if you would like to see more videos from me, but otherwise I will see you next time. Bye.